Hello everyone, hope you're having a good day. In this video I'm going to show you how I made my mega seed from Rick and Morty. This one took quite a lot of work and planning to do, so I hope you enjoy the video. So first I'm going to make a sponge, which is going to sit in the centre of the seed and makes up the bulk of this dessert. To make this sponge, I've taken a large mixing bowl and added in 2 eggs and 150 grams of sugar. I then just beat that together until well combined. In a separate bowl here, I've got 150 grams of plain flour, and to this I'm going to add 1 1/4 teaspoons of baking powder. To make sure that this is as smooth as possible and we don't have any pockets of baking powder, I'm just going to sift everything together. And once that's done, I'm adding just a sprinkle of salt to the mixture and then lightly folding it together. In a measuring jug here, I've got 125 millilitres of soy milk. Then to this I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract and then 60 grams of unsalted butter. I put this in the microwave on high power for about 30 seconds to melt everything together. And then I just added this to the remaining mixture and mixed until well combined. This is the kind of consistency we're looking for, thick but it can easily run off the back of a spoon. I've got to do quite a bit of carving to get the sponge into the shape that I want. So to make this a little bit easier, I've picked a wide rectangular dish to cook the sponge in. I'll put the dimensions of this in the description down below. So once I've greased the dish with butter, I'm going to pour in the batter and then place in an oven that's been preheated to 180 degrees C and bake for about 25 minutes. The sponge is done baking when it's an even golden brown on top and when a knife inserted in the centre comes out clean. To make the carving easier, I made this little template out of an old cereal box. This just gives me a better idea of where I need to cut when I'm carving the sponge. So you can see here, I'm cutting the main block into 2 even sized pieces. I'm going to work on one at a time, so I'll put one to the side just for now. So to start with, I'm just going for the general shape, so I'm doing vertical cuts, following the template, and just taking my time doing it slowly. This is what the sponge looked like after I did my first initial cuts. So there's no tapering or anything, we're going to do that in a second. This is just the vertical cuts to get the general shape. So I don't have any footage of the tapering, but what I was generally doing is just diagonal cuts and tapering the top to the bottom to make it more of a curve. You can see them side by side here. So with them cut, I'm going to put them in the freezer to chill because we want them to be as hard as possible when we cover them with the mousse. With the cake in the freezer, I then started making the mousse. So this is quite simple. So here I've got 100 grams of dark chocolate, which I've chopped up really finely so they melt as fast as possible. So I'm just going to add these to a measuring jug, and in this ramekin here I've got 100 millilitres of hot whipping cream. I just microwaved the cream for about 20 seconds. It was kind of bubbling hot, so I'm just going to add that to the chocolate and let it sit for about a minute. After a minute, I'm going to give it a stir to incorporate everything together. At this point the chocolate should be fully melted, so it's just a case of combining the melted chocolate and the cream. I then added another 100 millilitres of cold whipped cream that had been sat in the fridge, then mixed everything together again. Once everything was combined, I put the measuring jug in the fridge and left it overnight. It probably only takes about half an hour or so to come back down to temperature. So this footage here is taken from the next day. So my sponge and mousse have been chilling overnight and they're down to the proper temperature that I want to work with them at. In this ramekin here I've got about 40 grams of walnuts, which I've just chopped up into some kind of spiky little shapes here on the left, and then the rest of it I've kind of diced into small chunks on the right. We're going to use these to decorate the sponge to give them that jagged shape that the mega seed has. So here you can see one of the sponge halves, it's rock solid, really nice and frozen, and in this ramekin here I've got about 1/4 of the mousse mixture, which I've just gently whipped up with a whisk, incorporated some air into it, which has made it a lot firmer in texture. I'm then going to just layer this on top of the sponge, taking my time and trying to get an even coat all around. When I was happy with the result, I started adding the walnuts. I was going off a picture that I found online of the mega seed. The seed has these kind of vertical ridges, so that's what I was trying to replicate with the walnuts. Once I'd placed all the larger walnut pieces, I just sprinkled over the small little scraps. This was just to make the smoother areas look a bit rougher, more like what you see in the TV series. And here you can see the finished product after I've put everything in place. I repeated this again on the other half and put them in the freezer for about 2 hours to set up. After that 2 hours, this is what you can see here. They're very hard. The walnuts are properly set into the mousse and the mousse is hardened. So much so that I can turn it upside down like this and nothing's going to smush or push out of the way. So now I'm going to put the two pieces together. So I've whipped up a little bit more mousse and I'm going to spread this over the sponge face of one of the two halves. You can see me here just picking up the second piece and placing it on top and just gently pushing it together. The sponge here is actually so cold that the mousse begins to set up already, so it's actually a pretty strong hold here. You don't have to worry about it moving around too much. I'm then going to take the remaining mousse and just fill in the cracks, smooth everything over, and add a few more walnut pieces in. So now I've finished all the extra decorating, and I'm going to take my palette knife here and I'm going to slide it in between the two sponges. It's just going to give us something to hold on to when we coat it all with chocolate later on. I want to take my time here because I don't want to do too much damage to the inside. So when I finally got that in, I just popped everything back in the freezer to set up for about another 2 hours. The final large step in this whole process is tempering the chocolate and then coating the seed. So here I've got about 100 grams of dark chocolate which I've chopped up finely and added into a glass bowl over a pot of barely simmering water. We're just going to warm this chocolate enough to melt it. We don't want to go any higher than that. We're trying to temper the chocolate here. This is all about making the right size crystals for the chocolate so that when it sets, it goes smooth, glossy and snaps. So to the 100 grams of melted dark chocolate, I'm then going to add another 50 grams of dark chocolate, which again I've chopped up into small pieces. I've only added about half to begin with, but we can add the rest later on if it hasn't tempered properly on the first try. And then you're just going to mix this in. This lowers the temperature of the chocolate and by some magic of science tempers it. It's the first time I've done it, so it wasn't perfect, but I think I did okay. So to test that you've tempered the chocolate, you just take a little bit of greaseproof paper and dip it into the chocolate. You're then going to let this set for about a minute or so and then test it. So you should be able to touch it with your finger and it shouldn't melt on contact, and it should also snap when you break it. This first try here wasn't tempered properly, but I've got the remaining chocolate on the side there, so when I added everything together it was eventually 50 grams of chocolate that I added. But you have to keep playing around. If it isn't tempered, you need to add more chocolate until it is. So now I've got the tempered chocolate in the bowl on the right and my uncoated mega seed on the left. I thought brushing the chocolate on would be the best option here, so that's what I tried. So here you can see me brushing the chocolate on. It kind of worked okay. The chocolate kind of seized upon the brush, so what I eventually ended up doing was just using my hands. So I'd take like 2 fingers, wash them of course, then dip them in the chocolate and kind of brush the chocolate over the nut with my fingers. I let that set up in the fridge and this was the result. I think I achieved an even coat of chocolate all around. It took me quite a while, but it was pretty therapeutic. So though I was happy with this, I didn't think it looked exactly like the mega seed from the TV series, and I thought a coating of cocoa powder would help with that. So I went ahead and sprinkled some over. I did this from multiple angles to get into all the nooks and crannies. I didn't get everywhere. That kind of adds to the effect. And then you can see, I think this looks much better. You can actually see the protrusions and the jagged edges and stuff, because it's not as dark of a colour. So now I'm just going to cut it open. I'll let you listen to this quickly because it does make quite a satisfying sound. Got some nice looking layers in there. I'm going to take another little chunk off here for me to try. And again, the chocolate's set nicely, the cake's good, the mousse is set, but not hard. If you let it come to room temperature, everything's perfect. It's great. I was really pleased with this. It was quite a challenge. There was a lot of problems I had to solve along the way, but I think I did a good job. I just leave you with this final shot here of the mega seed. I hope I've done the TV show justice. This one was really fun to make. I had to plan this. It took me about a week to plan everything, research the recipes and stuff, and plan how I was going to design it. So let me know in the comments below if I've done a good job or not. Either way, I hope you guys really enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching.